We're rocking it.
We're rocking. All right. Boom. Guys, good to see you. I'm here with my good friend, Dr. Matt Uchtman. And I've been excited to talk to Dr. Matt for a while. The first time I met Dr. Matt, Dr. Matt, you were probably the first passionate, fired up chiropractic speaker I ever heard. I remember I got invited to this talk. I don't think you were allowed on campus actually when you spoke.
Correct.
And we went to this other venue, and you spoke and just ripped it, and it completely changed my philosophy on chiropractic, my philosophy on just health and why people get sick. And I love your fire. I love your spirit. Anytime we've called you to come speak at an event, you come. I mean, I remember one year you even came on your anniversary to speak to a group. You just told your wife, hey, we got to do this, and you did. For those who don't know Dr. Matt, he's owner of Elevation Chiropractic in Cape Girardeau, Missouri. He's served as a performance doctor for UFC fighter Matt Hughes Hit Squad. He's traveled to Rio in 2016 with Team USA Olympic teams. He's the real deal, and I'm excited to chat with you, Dr. Matt. Thanks for coming on, man.
Oh man, it's my pleasure. And yeah, I don't remember specifically, but I might have got a little bit of trouble for that on my anniversary, but I'm sure I did my best to make up for that. So, but you know what? That's the beauty of being married to someone who just, understands how important the message that we have is. And she's right along with me all the way, and she's supportive, and, we raise our kids a certain way. And so she knows, if I felt like it was something I needed to go and share, she understood, I'm sure, that there was going to be impact from it, and that's what we pray. And it sounds like, hopefully there was something said there that, has shifted some direction for some people, and that's what counts. So.
Yeah, and that's the feedback we got that night, man, because I remember that was a standing room only crowd when you came. It was a packed event. A lot of people were excited to see you. So I'd love for you to just start by just sharing your background, how you got into this field, man.
Well, it's not super exciting or super sexy. I would say it's, I played sports for a really long time. I was in undergraduate school. I got hurt playing basketball, and, my low back just was really giving me some trouble. And I actually grew up in a very medical mindset, traditional mindset when it comes to health. So I was just having some trouble, getting back to where I felt like I was functional. And there was a really good friend of mine who just saw a chiropractor regularly, and he mentioned, just trying that, because I'd done a lot of the physical therapy stuff, and, seen a doctor, and even tried anti-inflammatories. And just after a couple adjustments, I was seemingly back to normal. And so just because for some reason I've always just was never really a person that wanted to take a lot of medication, I always knew I wanted to get into health. Wasn't quite sure where I wanted to land. I had taken a lot of the pre-med classes in undergrad, and really just decided to check out chiropractic, and then just decided to pursue it. So that's really it. I know some people have amazing chiropractic miracle stories, and I get thankfully I get to see a lot of those, but that wasn't me. It was just more of a life little bump in the road, and I found a different direction that I didn't really know a lot about, and then just ended up pursuing chiropractic.
That's awesome, man. So how did you go from, new grad, new chiropractor, to doing what you've done with Matt Hughes Hit Squad, Olympic teams? I mean, how did you make those connections and end up doing chiropractic at that level?
A lot of it, I said I just pursued chiropractic, but I truly believe that chiropractic pursued me. I got connected with Matt Hughes and the Hit Squad through Coach Mark Fiore, and he's an amazing guy, still is, great coach. He's actually in Colorado now. But my connection to him started with my affiliation with Team USA through the Sports Performance Council. And so I had the opportunity to join that group. There was a little bit of a selection process to that, but I was able to get involved with them. And then that direct relationship because Mark Fiore used to be, a wrestler for Team USA, way back in the day. So I had reached out to him. They were just a few miles away from my existing clinic at the time. And he just accepted me with open arms and really was open to suggestions and ways to help. And it really got me in the door there. And maybe a good thing was that I wasn't a huge UFC fan, just admittedly. And so when I went in there and started working on these guys, I really didn't even know who I was working on. And then I would talk to friends of mine that watched UFC all the time, and I would say, yeah, I adjusted Matt Hughes today, or I adjusted Robbie Lawler, and I adjusted Kyle Watson. They're like, huh? Like who? Like the real people? And I'm like, yeah. And so then I got the opportunity to travel with them to some of their fights and just see how that whole process works. So it was pretty amazing, and really just some of those initial connections is how it happened. And I think once you make that connection and you just show up and they actually see that, Mark always used to say, man, I've always had lots of people approach me, but like you actually keep showing up and like you keep serving us and you're not asking for extra stuff. And I think when they just realize that you really just have a heart to help people because you care, the doors just open. And so I think for me, that's just always been behind it all is just, if you truly want to help people, the Lord God, for me, he's going to open up doors that are going to allow you to do it. So
I love it, man. Well, you speak a lot about getting kind of to the root cause of disease rather than just treating symptoms. And I remember that was a message that just really hit home for me the first time I heard you speak. What woke you up to that way of thinking?
I'd say, like a lot of people, I think I was pushed into a corner because of life circumstances. As I was in chiropractic school, I really was more musculoskeletal based. I was all about sports performance, which, luckily I got to continue. But right before I graduated, my mom was diagnosed with a brain tumor. And she was someone who had been in the traditional health field her entire life. And there was just so many gaps in her care and her health decline. And, even though she saw all the doctors and she had all the tests done and she followed their recommendations, what I kept seeing was her health declining. And once I finally got to that point where we were dealing with a brain tumor, I guess I just had this revelation of, how do we get here? And the next question was, even though she's seen all these doctors, how come they've never asked the question why? So, the main symptom that drove her to those tests was just debilitating migraine headaches. And she went to doctor after doctor after doctor, and they would always ask her, how she felt. And they would ask her, collectively what her symptoms look like. And then they would do their best to give her a diagnosis, which I know we've all been taught is so important. And then the next question was, well, how do we treat it? And that's where it ended. So it just went from one drug to another drug to another drug. But no one ever asked that question, well, like, why is she having headaches in the first place? And why are they so bad? And why aren't they going away? And, not to mention she had heart problems and blood pressure issues and cholesterol problems and depression and thyroid and sleep and gut. So at the end of the day, I realized that collectively, those questions were never asked. And probably someone that and honestly, he would never know this. And I think I've told him a couple times, but a guy that changed my life as far as chiropractic goes was James Chestnut. I got introduced, I don't think it was random, but I went out to Parker in Las Vegas. Back then they had these, big Vegas Parker events. And there's probably 25 speakers that you could go to at any given time. You just have to choose. And I'm looking at this, large sheet of all these presenters. And I just said, well, let's go here. So I went in there and it literally changed my life because I resonated with his mindset. He had very similar questions that I had as a chiropractor. I'd heard all these people talk about subluxation and philosophy and, how it can be so detrimental to someone's overall health. But I never had someone really explain to me how it worked physiologically. And Dr. Chestnut was that guy because he had the same question. He was like, listen, subluxation is either real or it's not. And it's either happening or it isn't. And so in chiropractic has a role in it or it doesn't. And so he just mapped that out for me. And I just walked out of there realizing that, man, I thought I got into this to help people with back pain. But this is actually something that can transform people's lives. And not just because I say that, but because it's true. And so I think collectively those two things just redirected the course of my career. And it's never stopped really since then. So
I love it, man. Well, you mentioned your mom's case and how when she went in, it was really, okay, what are the symptoms? What's the diagnosis? What's the treatment? And the questions of how'd you get there really weren't asked. So in your opinion, how do people get there? How do people go from healthy to sick? What's that process like?
Physiologically, I guess we could get real complex about it, but like in real life, it's easy. It's stress. It's everyday stress. It's the choices that we make or that we don't make. It's the physical stress that we're exposed to through, traumas and repetition and overuse, sports, phones, games, computers. It's all that stuff. It's the chemical exposure to stress that we have every day. It's the foods that we eat. It's the air we breathe. It's the water we drink. It's the stuff we put on our skin. It's all of those things collectively. That's another area of stress, which is chemical. And then last, and I guarantee you not least, is the emotional stress. And that is probably never been more evident than maybe this year for some of us. But this comes down to work. It comes down to not working. It comes down to your spouse, your kids, your extended family, COVID itself, the elections. It's all that stuff. And what happens is it starts to compile in our body, which is awesome, is made to fight that stuff off. But after a while, when it just keeps building and building and building, we just get to a place where we can't overpower that. And when our body gets to a place where it's overwhelmed, it lets you know, because it's smart, by giving you symptoms. And those symptoms are just a signal letting you know something's not right. But the problem is that most of us, including me, we've been taught our whole lives that the symptoms are the problem. And so what we do is then we get some type of method of treatment to help manage or mitigate the symptom, which actually changes nothing. And so then it all keeps building. And then the next thing you know, it manifests as this huge disease process that for most people catches them off guard, but really shouldn't.
Yeah. So in that case, what's the path for those people to find health?
Oh, that's a great question. I think that the first step for people, and this is going to sound super simple, because, you hear this all the time too, Doc. So one of the reasons that people feel like they can't make a move towards creating better health for themselves is because it's too expensive, right? Or because it's too hard. So I always tell people, if you're looking for one or two things to do that cost you absolutely nothing more, that are not hard to do, physically not hard to do, maybe not as simple as it should be. But the way I would start was, listen, you have got to create a time in your life each day where you can get away from whatever is getting your attention. You need to create downtime. You need space for yourself. You need to shut the world off. You need to protect your ears, protect your eyes, protect your heart every single day. It allows for you to process and get rid of what has happened yesterday. It allows you to prepare yourself for whatever the world may throw at you today. But we are almost scared. I believe we're almost scared of downtime. And here's how I know this, even me. I know that if I have quiet time, it's not very easy, or it's not hard for me to just want to reach for my phone, right? As soon as there's a down minute, I want to reach for my phone. I know that sometimes I'm in my car and I'm driving and I stop at a stoplight for just a few minutes, and that's scary enough for me that I reach for my phone, right? Some people are so scared of downtime, they want to reach for their phone while they're driving. Or how about this? They'll be sitting in their living room with their wife or their kids, but they'll have their phone, they'll have their computer, and they'll have the TV on. Like, we're so used to never-ending stimulation and entertainment that we have just found ourselves in a place where we have no time to just reflect or think about things. For a lot of believers out there, I know a lot of them are praying for answers and praying for direction, but there's not zero time throughout their day that they could ever receive an answer. So I would say the first thing is just create quiet time for yourself. When does that have to happen? You decide. It could be late at night. It could be early in the morning. But I'd say that's the first step. I say the second step that does not cost a lot extra, people have to get sleep. People have to sleep. They have to be able to recover. We know from a nerve system standpoint, that's when the nerve system heals things. That's when the parasympathetics kick in. That's how people digest and rest and recover and heal. And for most people, they're in that stress state so much, they can't get to sleep, so their body can't recover. So that's the first two. And then we know some of the simple ones. Hey, third graders know that you should probably eat some good food from time to time, right? I just did a talk yesterday at a school, and I asked them, I didn't ask them what tastes better, but I asked them, what's better for you, an apple or a donut? And guess what? They all knew it. The problem is, guess which one we want to reach for?
Donut.
So it's simple things. And here's what I tell people all the time. Sorry, I'm getting fired up here.
No, do it, man.
This is what I'm saying, though. We don't have to be perfect, but we have to be willing to make progress. And we have to be realistic about what we're going to be able to do on a day-to-day basis to make that happen. So not a week from now, not a month from now, but a year from now, collectively, because of those choices, we're better people. And we need to move, right? We have to move. Like, exercise is not just a good idea. It's part of what we need to survive. It helps to keep our bodies healthy. It gets rid of stress. It helps with oxidative stress. We need to do that. And then obviously, as chiropractors, what people miss about chiropractic, and what I never understood, was that the chiropractic adjustment is such a powerful thing, not because it makes noise, not because it helps people, get rid of whatever symptoms they have, but because it takes all that stress that's accumulated in that person's life and it removes it. It pulls it off of that nervous system so you can recover, so you can physiologically take a deep breath, so you can increase your bandwidth, because the stress will continue to come. When you leave my office or your office, or when people walk down the street, the stress is there. But the difference is, for people who don't get adjusted, it just stays there and it just creates havoc, and they get used to it and they tolerate it and they don't realize that it's there. And so the removal of that stress, which creates momentum and recovery and efficiency, allows for people to move forward. And if you can start bringing some of those things together, if not all of them, there's really no way to stop a person from moving in the right direction. There just isn't.
Yeah. I think my biggest takeaway from what you're saying here is that health is really a practice. It's not something that just happens to you. Disease isn't just something that happens to you. It's the cumulative result of time and repetition of these positive behaviors, whatever that is.
Right.
And so there's an element of responsibility here, where ultimately we are responsible for our health. And I think that's kind of lost in our healthcare system, where people are treated like they're victims of disease. But accepting responsibility for it and just saying, regardless of whether I knew this was a good or bad choice or not, I'm responsible for where I am, right? And if you're willing to do that, that's an empowering place to be, because if you want to change your life, all you have to do is change your choices. And that's what I love about your type of work and this philosophy. Is it's an empowering philosophy,
and it doesn't change. There's this delusion and this lie, as far as I'm concerned, that we've all been taught about health, where we're constantly looking outside of ourselves for the answer. Right now, people are looking outside of themselves to protect themselves from COVID with whatever they may put on. It could be a full suit, it could be a mask, it could be whatever. They're looking outside themselves for a cure. They're looking outside themselves for a vaccine. But what we have to remember is that regardless of what we're up against, the strength of the virus will never be more important than the strength of the actual host. And that is a lie that we've all bought into, because if it's not a virus, or if it's not a vaccine, or it's genetics, or it's bad luck. And the reality of the matter is that there are things in our world that we can control, and there are things in our world that we can't control. But what I mean by it doesn't change is the fact that no matter what you have or where you're at, if you do certain things, your body will get stronger. Like, it's just a fact. And so I think that what people need for empowerment is the realization of just taking responsibility can be somewhat, frustrating at first, but then it also reminds you that you also have all kinds of potential to move in a different direction. And then what you have to do, and this is, you have to take, where you are and where you want to be, and you have to start doing things to move you in that direction. And if you're not, it's never going to happen. It just isn't.
Yeah. And, a huge part of that, obviously there's a lifestyle piece, but also just having great guidance.
Yeah.
And that's really why you and I exist is, yes, we give great care, but also giving great guidance to people. Now, for someone who feels stuck, for someone who looks at this whole COVID situation and they feel like there is no hope right now, what would you say to those people?
First thing I would say is quit watching the news. I think we have to be very, and I say that jokingly, but I think too, it's the truth. Again, it's so important. We have to be very cautious as to what we allow in, who we allow to speak into our life. Everything that I've been seeing for the last 6 to 8 months, or however long it's been, it seems like 2 years, has been based on fear. And I know for most people, that's not the place in their life that they want to live from. But if we pay attention to those things enough, it's almost hard to get away from it. So I think just, if you are wanting to move in a different direction, you should probably start following and listening to someone who's already there. One of the things you said earlier I thought was so good. You said it's a process. But when you said that, what I was thinking is, what's not? If I want to have a great marriage with my wife, like, it takes work. It takes intentfulness. It takes date nights. It takes me listening. It takes all that. If I want to have some type of a handle on my finances, it takes time. It takes discipline. It takes choices. It takes maybe pushing things off that I want now that I need to wait for later. If I want a good relationship with my kids, it's no different. So why would health be different than that? I think we've been taught that it is, but it's really not. So I think the first step to getting, some type of hope and direction would be, number one, just being, more intentful or mindful of who you're listening to and what they're saying. And if what they're saying is not where you want to go, I'd probably change it. Start listening to folks that are just delivering a different message. That, here's the thing, there are lots of challenges right now, but talk to people who are going to provide solutions. When I talk with my kids and they want to come to me and they want to whine about everything, which is often, I always let them know, listen, I'm not really interested in hearing a problem until you come to me with some type of a solution. So for some people, they don't have the solution yet. So they just can reach out to people. They can follow people. I mean, listening and following this podcast, like, you're talking to people all the time that are delivering a message that's different than mainstream, that's going to at least allow them to ask better questions and to filter it differently and to have a little bit different paradigm. And that's where it starts. I mean, most people know, when you ask me what to do, most people know they need to do those things. The problem is they're just not doing them, and that all starts in their brain. So, one of our fundamentals in the clinic is philosophy, and it's all about how you see the world, and it's all about your expectation. It's all about what you accept to be okay or you're normal. And so I'd say the biggest thing for them to move in a different direction is, number one, being open. Number two is just letting different information into their brain.
Yeah. I love it, man. Well, I tell you what, man, I really appreciate you coming on. It's always a pleasure when you and I get to have conversations. And anytime I talk to people, I love to give you the last word. So what does the world need to hear from Dr. Matt Uchtman today?
I don't know. I would hope that what the world gets to hear is not from me. But I think that's something that's important right now. And I think I'm going to speak to two people. I'm going to speak to just general population, and I want to speak to chiropractic. So I think for the general population, I think what we need to all understand is that this is a tough year, and that life is heavy. And there's challenges out there for people who may see this that we have no idea what they're going through. So we're not being cavalier about that. But I also know that there's people that are close to you that care about you, that want better, that want to help you, that want to listen. And I would make sure that you just do some inventory and try to do your best to be more around those people, and then just seek out guidance to help you maneuver from whatever situation you may be in, because the challenges are definitely real. I mean, I see this every day. More marriages are struggling now that I see in practice than I've ever seen. I'm seeing, child abuse up, suicide is up. And so we're in a place right now where it is fairly dark and it's very heavy, but there are sources of light. There are people who are trying to encourage and move people in the other direction. So I would make sure that you look for those people. In regards to chiropractic and chiropractors in particular, we need to step up. We can't just sit back and own what we know and not share it more than we ever have. All the stuff I just said about people being hurt and suffering and sick is truer now than ever, and we have a way that we can help. And so you need to carry a little more urgency in what you do every day. You need to make sure that your community knows what you stand for and that you are there to help them and move people in a better direction. They're looking for help. They don't know where to go, and you have the answer. So don't forget that. We expect things and we take things for granted that, thank God, we know. And it's our responsibility to make sure the rest of the community, the rest of the state, the rest of the world understands health the way that we do. So I would just challenge chiropractors to step up the game, be committed, recommit, whatever you need to do, because the world is looking for answers. And it's going to come from people who can teach them the chiropractic lifestyle and understand the chiropractic philosophy. And I believe that now more than ever. And I know that there's plenty of docs out there that understand that, but I also know, because I've been getting phone calls from doctors here that are not doing well. Their practices are failing. And it's not because there's a lack of people who need it. It's because their focus has shifted as well. And they need to get back on track, and they need to speak the truth. No one needs more than that. And they need to let people know that they care and that they're going to help be their advocate moving them forward.
I love it. Well, Dr. Matt, thanks for doing this, man. And for those of you who would like to connect with Dr. Matt, you can visit his website, elevationcape.com. He's in Cape Girardeau, Missouri, Elevation Chiropractic. Dr. Matt, would love to do this again, man.
Yeah, man. Oh, it's my pleasure. I appreciate you, and thanks for doing this. And keep reaching out. It's a powerful thing.
Yeah, we'll do, man. All right, guys. Have a great weekend.